No. Okay, those in favour say aye. Aye. And against carried. Thank you. Next item up is the policy at Mason. So Rebecca's going to come up and join Mason. Tanya, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I'll ask Rebecca to make this presentation, and then Tanya and myself and others can answer any questions, but just to really acknowledge the purpose of this paper is to take you through the management of storm-affected land, and in particularly signal where we can safely optimise some of that land and avoid further cost and recover some cost once homes are removed, and we can reuse that land potentially. So
and noting this is a first peek at it, it's a draft, and that the decision will be made at Richard's committee in the future.
Apologies, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this is seeking your endorsement and recommendation to Councillor Hill's committee.
Thank you, Mace. Kia ora koutou, ko Rebecca Cruz tōku ingoa. I'm a Principal Policy Advisor, and I've supported the development of the draft storm affected land use policy and implementation approach. Is there a... Excellent, thank you. So the approach to storm-affected land management has three components, and this policy will guide the storm-affected land use program. The draft policy and implementation approach has been developed to ensure that the storm-affected properties that we are purchasing are managed responsibly, so that we take account of any future risks, that we are considering the costs and benefits of the decision, and that we are effective in our decision making so that we can deliver positive outcomes for Auckland. So the draft policy sets the outcome that storm affected properties purchased by the council will be repurposed to the best use possible that takes account of identified risks. So the draft principles that you can see here are very similar to those that were approved in May last year. And these will guide the decision making on the process for the best use of the sites that we have purchased. So following the policy, the implementation approach details the process we will use to identify the appropriate use for the properties. So once purchased, the properties will enter that triage process, and here we'll identify interim maintenance needs, look at factors that need to be considered during the house removal and land assessment stages, and also look at any features that may move the property into the complex cases stream, and this includes those that are held in cross lease or in unit title. So then the property will move into the land assessment use stage, and here we need to weigh up different factors to determine the best use of each property. So this includes looking at Auckland Council service needs, mana whenua interest, financial considerations, and redevelopment potential. And we do this to ensure that we manage all the risk, or manage the risk that we can, follow a good process, and to help us ensure that we are making good use of the land. So the analysis will then help us identify what properties are most appropriate for divestment or for retention. So in terms of divestment, we can do that through the market for redevelopment for, say, housing, or we can divest with conditions for mitigation to the property or the dwelling. And in some cases, we may be able to divest for non-redevelopment use, where we could, where properties could be amalgamated into neighbouring sites, where neighbours could use this for additional garden space or additional outdoor space. Where Auckland Council retains the property, this is for identified service uses. uses. This can include flood resilience or stream management works, or to add to our parks network. In some cases, we will have to retain high hazard land because it is unsafe for redevelopment or unsafe for people to be on it. And on other sites, there will be no identified service need or market interest at this current point. And we will continue to review these for opportunities to put into service use or for divestment. We will also look at opportunities on the high hazard land sites and the residual land that we will hold to support things like the urban ngahere strategy and looking at environmental outcomes that we can be achieved through, say, like planting on these sites. So this slide just shows the high-level delivery for the first 2 years of the storm-affected land management program. And just to note that this program will continue beyond the 2020-17. Mihi kia koutou, we're happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. First question, Mayor Brown. Oh, hang on, we better move it.
I had one, and it was on your, if you go to the second slide, I think you got the 4 or 5 things. Number 4, it said, make use of existing council processes. Now, that's not all that clever, because sometimes our council processes are not, what I'd rather replace that with was be commercial. And for instance, we've got all these, when I went through those boxes about how you get rid of a house, we've got a lot, the way we've got it is kind of constipated, and we've got quite a lot of potential houses there that are being damaged by vandals while they're buggerising around organising it, because we don't have good processes. The process that someone in the real world would do with that is that you would publish the list of everything that's available and send it to every single player in the house shifting, whereas you've gone for this idea of having local managed things in a certain area. The thing is that the area in New Zealand is one big market. People shift houses from Northland to Southland. And so we're losing value while we're doing this. So I want them to actually just open it up and let anyone come up with an offers as quick as possible, because we're losing. And then if the more that you get shifted out of there, the less you get tangled up with asbestos and all that other stuff like that, because the house moving market just moves the houses as is, where is. And if you understand that market, you avoid getting yourself tangled up. And so I've got a sneaking suspicion that in order to do a whole lot of good things, we're just losing money. And we're in the whoop pull up stage of the money on this sector, because we've already had this 700 to 1,200, and I wonder whether or not that is somehow or other involved in, and perhaps I'd like a comment from there, with the intolerable risk to life. Is it really intolerable risk to life? Because in fact, you could say that everyone's intolerable risk to life. You know, I mean, it could be an asteroid or a volcano. I mean, that's a bit ridiculous, but some of these places didn't look that intolerable. You know, getting wet once or twice every so often is not necessarily an intolerable risk. Some of them obviously are. I'm not questioning that. But there's a borderline. For instance, anyone on top of a cliff who's built a house within the equivalent distance of the height of the cliff is already living in an intolerable risk to life. But they've chosen to do that. And so if you're on the top of a 50-metre high cliff and you're 25 metres back and now you're 5 metres back, nothing's changed. You're already far too close, because cliffs drop back to 45 degrees sooner or later. And so I want to know that I'm not mad about our council processes driving things. I'd rather have it be commercial, because we don't have a council process for handling a lot of suddenly having several hundred houses for sale, and so we'll invent one. And so we go into a room and think, oh, let's do this by area, and it's not a good solution. The area of that market is New Zealand, and so everybody that's in that field should be given the list of what they are and say, go and have a look. We'll be happy to have unsolicited bids. before they're all ruined. So that's my whole series of questions and comments, but there is a question there. Would you be prepared to say commercial? And how tough are we able to review these independently and say it really wasn't a intolerable risk to life? Because we've said several questions today. How to get from 700 to 1,270? Okay.
I think, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Your Worship. Just on the issue of existing council processes, it's about leveraging those, but I hear you loud and clear about commercial partnerships and whether it's either selling the property where it's safe to do so, or it's selling homes for removal. So I think, as you heard from Mr. Bird last week, we have opened up that market a lot more. And we're looking at how we can open up the market a lot more, including, in one case I'm aware of, just that are coming up, auctioning of homes where that's possible, so we get the best.
It's not a commercial partnership. I mean, businesses that sell stuff don't have a commercial partner, they just have customers. And as soon as you get a commercial partnership, that's where you go wrong. That's what was wrong with Iki Panuku. They had about 5 partners instead of the whole market. And so it reduces your returns, increases the time of dealing with, and is open to all sorts of questions about how fair and reasonable it was. So just the open slather market, not partnerships, if that's all right. Sorry.
Understood.
Are we really able to stand an independent review of whether it was intolerable risk to life? Because quite a lot of people decided that they weren't really involved in this program, and 18 months later they changed their mind because it looked pretty attractive. Now, they obviously weren't in an intolerable risk to life. Otherwise they would have signed up straight away. So these are questions which I'm getting constantly asked by people.
I think this is about, though, the policy in terms of, so we've, fair enough questions, but this is, because I'm really conscious of the time, this is about the policy and how we deal with that Cat 3 stuff and those properties. So if we can keep it on that.
Okay, well, I like the policy generally, but I just want the policy to be wide open and subject to review and not tangled up with our policy, our council policies. This is another policy. It's enough of having to give a policy on policies. Thank you.
And just before we move on, just someone like to move and second. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Angela. Okay, Julie.
Thanks. Can I just check something? And apologies, this may be in the detail somewhere, but I'm having a bit of trouble with my eyes and I can't read properly today. So that's why Angela said I was squinting before. So can I just check in about the process from here? So we endorse the draft today and it goes to P&P for sign-off. What happens in between those 2 points, and does that include talking to local boards? Thanks.
Through the chair, thank you. So local boards had a briefing earlier this month. They were advised of the process and they've been able to provide didn't ask some questions about this and are generally supportive. They were just quite interested in when they would get to see what the properties were and the maps and things like that. And we've been assured that as this program progresses, they will get opportunities to view the list of properties that are in this program. Over the date for the Planning and Policy Committee is the 13th of March. Okay. So it's just a month in between, and we will be going there. If we get endorsement in principle here, we will be seeking approval there.
And so what's the understand we have to go through the 2 committees, get that, but this is a draft. What is our process or other elected members and local boards' process for requesting changes prior to the final in March? Normally local boards would give feedback by resolution, and it seems they've given feedback in a less formal way, which if they're fine with it, I'm fine with it. But yeah, and I know we had a workshop on this, but is there going to be some more work between this and the next vote?
I understand the issue, Councillor Ferry. We haven't had it, we've had supportive comment back from local boards around this policy, but you may remember we've currently got interim guidelines in place for disposal, and we've only had support from local boards at progressing this, understanding that they'll be involved in some of the triage where properties, they may have an interest in open space, where it fits with their service need, where they have funding to be able to manage and maintain that land, or it meets an open space need that's part of the open space network plan. So, local boards will have an opportunity to actually be part of the process in allocating this land. There are some, having said that, and listening to the Mayor, there are some properties immediately that we are wishing to dispose of, either for removal or redevelopment as well, where it's sensible to do so.
Okay, thank you. So my one other thing with this is the use, and that the land is going to be, from my reading of it, which, as I say, I can't check because I can't read the screen properly, is that all the land will be de facto non-service land and then assessed as to whether it does meet a service need or whether there's some other outcome for it. So I'm a bit wary of that, having had some experience in the past where we had something that the community was quite keen to secure for a community outcome. It was non-service, it was sitting in the corporate portfolio, and was going to be sold, and then corporate decided at the last minute before we could get it switched to a community function that they would actually use it. And so I'm just a little bit uncomfortable about elected members generally don't have oversight of non-service land decisions historically. So it's almost like we need a third category for this one, which is, not to be defined, because historically we've treated non-service land as a decision for officers as opposed to a decision for elected members. And that would mean the assumption would be that officers are making a decision first. So that's part of the point to my question about what happens between now and the PMP vote. Is there room to change things to get some clarity on an issue like that between, I'm quite keen to vote for this draft, to endorse it, but is there going to be some wiggle room for some further clarifications or improvements between now and the PMP vote? And that's my specific example.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, we can circulate the draft policy as it is now to local boards. There has been an engagement with local boards chairs prior to this, and the policy itself, the implementation part of it is local board input and into where they have a service need, where that service need is funded as well. So there are some bars for local boards and others to meet, but the land is held as non-service land, and that was a decision you made at the start of this process, acknowledging that even some of the land that Rebecca's described as high hazard land may also have an amenity use quite a bit of the time. So for example, in a floodway, there will be amenity use, but we take your point.
Just before
I'll follow this up offline.
Just before we move on, we have to move an extension of time. Julie, you'll be happy to do that. And Angela, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? No. Thank you. As you were. Have you finished, Julie?
Yes.
Okay. Richard.
Hold up, hold up.
Just a quick question. I spoke about this in the political group. How are we making sure, and it is in the plan, but that we don't give people false hope? As I've said at public meetings, the Mayor wants as much of this land sold if it is safe, and it's part of the business case. How do we make sure that we don't put out too many pretty pictures saying that this could be your next pocket park if that is not going to be the case? And the other thing, Mayor, definitely in the North Shore Ward, there's a lot of people who are in a dire situation where they are not getting a buyout. So the threshold has been pretty high. Like in Milford, I think it was 2 metres of water inside a house that you got you the buyout kind of thing.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. We've been, a recent Our Auckland story on the 10th of February really painted that picture of this is about optimisation and enabling, helping fund some of the other enabling works for flood resilience. But I take your point that we have to be realistic and honest with communities about this land.
Okay, Shane.
Hey, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of really quick ones, and just following up on the question from Councillor Ferry. Just wanted to check, are local boards going to have the chance to actually input into this before it's all finalised? Because I think not just the Chairs Forum, I think individual members would really like the chance to input into it.
So certainly over the next 2 weeks, Councillor Henderson has that opportunity, and then as part of the implementation, as I said, local boards are integral to that.
That's fantastic. That's really great to hear. The other question I have is, what role does Kāinga Ora play in all this? Because we've had, a lot of these houses are Kāinga Ora, right? And when things hit, I was, well, yeah, yep, thank you. I was on the phone to the liaison and I said, look, this is a good opportunity through the tragedy to actually redevelop and provide homes in places where the wait list for Kāinga Ora is huge. People need the houses. So nevertheless, we're hearing the slowdowns in investment and a backsliding and that kind of stuff. So what's Kāinga Ora going to do in all of this?
Mr. Chairman, in some locations, Councillor Henderson and your ward included, but in many councillors' wards, Kāinga Ora are an adjacent property owner, so there are will be opportunities for Kāinga Ora to enter this process to acquire land or to partner with others in a commercial way to deliver outcomes for housing.
Sorry, I hope I'm not talking off post, but I wonder if you've got any insight into how the appetite is for that from Kāinga Ora and how far along they are in that process, or do we just not know? I should ask them.
They are intensely interested because in many of the locations there is a lot of land, quite a reasonable amount of land owned by Kāinga Ora, and as I think you're aware, they weren't eligible for this buyout scheme as a Crown entity.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Greg?
Yeah, thanks. Through you, the Chair. Just wrestling, you'll be able to explain this to me, Mace, but so if it's a Category 3 and we end up the property owner, and then I'm talking about land sales, so we perhaps this gets put back to the market for general public, for want of a better word, to have a tender or what process we might use for it. Why would that not be? Why would that not be a 2P? So obviously, you know, we took it out as Category 3 because it couldn't be used, and then we put it back on the market saying, well, you know, you might be able to build on it. So in that scenario, if we get asked why, you know, you see what I'm getting at there? You know, why that changed? So that's my first part of my question.
I think there's a number of lenses to look through, Councillor. So at a collective level, we've got a multiple number of houses. The current built form cannot be resolved in a place, Councillor Hills, like Milford, parts of Milford, Nile Road, Woodbridge, Elmer. So really you're going to a greenfield situation so you can resolve those issues and build in a different form, a different development form in part of that land, certainly not all of it. And on an individual basis, it's often where for Category 2P, it exceeded 25% and the homeowner wasn't willing to top up that amount for 25%. Or we can put a covenant on the property where the ground floor was flooded and was a residential part of a residential dwelling floor, but the upper floor did not flood and is safe in terms of the unitary plan, and there is it's a safe place to live and egress from. So it does require some investment, but the net approach is retaining housing in a community and divesting council in terms of optimising what we've had to do through this scheme. So there are some learnings in this scheme. If we were to ever be in a position to have to do this type of thing again, we may set some different policy parameters, but that's something we'll report back to you on in the future.
Terrific, thank you for answering that. And I guess the timeline, if it does go out to private, you know, out to the market, will that happen? When we're likely to see that occur? And if people are interested in a particular property, how would they register their interest?
The timeline will start quite shortly. In fact, some of that's commenced already under the interim guidelines that you've approved. And we are holding a register, for example, with people who are interested in neighbouring properties that are Category 3 and they wish to extend their garden or have a non-residential use on those properties. And we have got a register commenced for commercial interests in land as well, land and housing.
Do they contact your office to get on the register just through the Auckland Council call centre?
There's an email to the, I think it's recovery@aucklandcouncil.govt.nz, but we can circulate that, and it's up on the website on our FAQs.
Ken?
Thank you. Didn't need to write my question down. You know, it's all getting very, very complicated, and all I'm looking for out there is the challenges. So what you just said there about, you know, maybe the upper floor can be lived in the bottom. So we're going to consent the properties that we've purchased to deliver the best value to sell them. You know, well, the reason I'm saying it like that is because I've got several people now, one that I've been helping for a long time. I'm up to 20,000 words worth of email stream to several different people in this in the ELT, where they can't get a building permit because they can't meet council's criteria to prove that by 2090 they are going to satisfy any potential flood risks. And some of those requirements are ridiculous. And I can't get an answer there. So how are we going to get an answer for a property that we've already brought out because of the risk being proven?
It does depend on the circumstances, Councillor Turner. Our initial triage, that would only relate to 2 or 3% of these existing homes and houses that we've currently been able to assess. So, but in terms of where there's a greenfields approach where we've removed homes, would be quite a different built form and may also rely on other resilience being delivered, flood resilience that is.
Okay, thank you. I'm probably trying to send a loud message to someone else in this room, not just you, but that is not much hope or help to the one person who's got a problem right now on a property that never has flooded. Thank you.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you, team. You can step back. Any debate or commentary on this?
One.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to follow up on my thing about council processes, we've just had a list. How you went about that was we call for expressions of interest. And so you get the 11 people who saw the expressions of interest call. A quick look on the phone and you get 30 or 40 companies who shift houses. Big ones like Hark and Highway House Movers aren't in they may not have noticed our expression. So if you're going, how you would do it in the real world is you'd look up on the phone on Google and you would send a note to every one of those and said, we've got 200 or 300 houses. Here they are, go and have a look. So that's my thing about we're tangled up on our processes. Just Google is not banned, I don't think, for the council during working hours, but at the end, even at night, you could look it up. There's a lot of companies do this. Thank you.
Okay. No further comments? Or move or put it. Those in favour say aye. Aye. And against? Carried. Thank you. Righto. The next one up is the first of a two-part